first thing most organizations did, early March when COVID had begun, was to first reach out to their respective customers. All organizations quickly reached out to their customers. First is to give them the kind of an emotional comfort as well, that we are in it together. The partnership that we have nurtured over so many years and decades. This is testing time for both the customer and us. But this is something that we would tide away with. So while none of us knew exactly how are we going to deal with the situation, but I think providing that kind of a comfort that we are in it together, that was very, very much important, and it is something that came in handy and was very useful while interacting with the customers as well. Quickly, most organizations figured first, how are we going to work around it? So that was something which, with the help of technology, I think the adoption of technology has been very, very swift and quick. Second, after giving that kind of an emotional comfort to each of the customers, like most organizations went about quickly drafting their business continuity plan. When the COVID happened, everything stopped. When there was a lockdown announced and all, there was a lot of merchandise goods which were in transit. Trucks were stranded, materials which the customers had already paid for was in en route to their factories, but had to be stopped just because a nationwide lockdown was announced. So helping the customers track their shipments, track their consignments. I think that is another thing that the most organizations quickly got into, assuring them that their money was safe for what they have already paid for, the merchandise for which they have already paid for, and also, helping them track each and every movement, even the truck movement, till it reached the factory gate. So that was another quick response that was to be done in terms of ensuring that the existing goods and merchandise that they had ordered, which was stranded because of this, sudden lockdown that was announced, reached their factory gates safe and sound. Another quick response that the organizations did was, to very, very quickly recast the supply chain. Because of these lockdowns, and as we moved during the lockdown journey, lockdowns were partially lifted in some states, not lifted in the other states. So what was the best way to reach out to the customers so that you ensure business continuity of the customers? Most organizations had to rejig their supply chain, rejig their from which factory they were reaching out to their customers. Even the mode of transport, whether moving from road to rail, if rail is not available, the sea route, to reach the customer. So a lot of rejigging of the supply chain also happened as a response to the lockdown. So these were the very immediate, quick responses that we needed to do. To reiterate, number one, giving an emotional comfort to the customers to ensure them that we are in with them together. Number two, the goods and merchandise that were stranded because of the sudden lockdown that was announced, to ensure that reached to their factory gates safely. And number three, rejigging the supply chain to ensure continuity of supplies as much as possible. Obviously, it was not something that we could restore it back to 100%. Some of the very immediate challenges, the focus most organizations then shifted to see how can we start getting back to normalcy. And in that, most organizations came and to the aid of their customers in, again, multiple ways. One, helping the customer to think clearly and to forecast clearly. Because of COVID, everything was so difficult to predict and difficult to foresee as to what is going to be the order status, what is going to be the kind of demand, the pace of demand revival. So working with the customers, helping them plan for their customers was also very, very important. We sat down with the customers, looked at the assumptions they were making, giving them some inputs of how we saw the macroeconomic unfolding during the COVID era and post-COVID era, so that they do not make any rash decisions or they do not make any wrong decisions. So that is something that we did. Most organizations did very, very working closely with their customers. Second was to solve for the liquidity problem. I think not only our customers, but across the businesses, everybody had a huge liquidity crunch. Factories came to a standstill, sales came to a standstill. So the entire cycle of money suddenly stopped. And therefore, if you had to kickstart the economy again or kickstart the order cycle again with the customers, somebody had to plow in the money first. So organizations have worked very, very closely with their customers, trying to solve for their liquidity needs, whether it's tying up with financial institutions which provided money in this. So it was guaranteed by large organizations who had a good credit worthiness, and so backed by them, the financial institutions lend to the customers as well. The government, of course, came in and gave in a lot more stimulus, financial stimulus, and asked the banks to provide the same, and that again helped. So that was one big ticket agenda, solving the liquidity crisis of the customers, so that the order book cycle starts again. Third big ticket item that we helped and most organizations helped the customers during the COVID journey was also how do they deal with the entire safety standards, because suddenly the safety standards were of a completely different order in all the plants, factories, etc. So, helping them, aiding them in terms of sharing best practices, sharing how do you improve the processes within their factories, so that they also follow all the prescribed norms of restarting their factories. So there was a lot of SOPs, standard operating procedures that we adopted to deal with restarting the factories while COVID was still on. So as the lockdown norms eased, as the factories began to start again, a lot many more measures were supposed to be taken. So that was again we partnered with the customers to share these best practices along with them. Fourth, with the help of technology, most organizations worked with their customers to organize seminars, webinars over the virtual platform, getting in leading experts from various walks of life. So there could be perhaps and professional from the financial business side who would come and address the customers on what could they do with their how do they manage their capital, how do they manage their cash flow positions, what are the various alternate channels of financing available. There could be a seminar. There were seminars organized around the economy, wherein leading economists were called to give their viewpoint on how do they see the revival of the economy, how much time would it take, what is the impact, what is the likely impact of COVID that is going to happen on various sectors of the economy. So those were some of the seminars that were held. We likewise held seminars on professionals coming in from, say, the human resources side of the business, leading professionals coming and explaining to the customers on how they need to deal with their employees and their ecosystem during this pandemic. So multiple levels of engagement with the customers. I think the key learning and the key learning of the I think the key learning during the pandemic and this COVID lockdown was that heightened interaction with the customers and increasing the frequency of the customers, increasing the frequency of the customer interaction as well. I think the organizations which stayed true to their core values of consumer centricity, those are the kind of organizations who have, emerged out of this pandemic much better than the rest of the organizations. My personal choice, I would always prefer in-person communication because it brings, a lot of, I believe it brings a lot of warmth when, you're together, sitting together. It also helps during the interaction while there is a lot of business talk that needs to be done and accomplished, but also at the same time, for any relationship to prosper, we need to also have a personal connect. And therefore, a business meeting followed by a lunch or a dinner or even a cup of coffee. I think that kind of a connect, which is something that gets missed out in the virtual setup. So if you ask me, my first preference would always be a personal one-on-one, meeting always. And also what it helps is that, your meeting, since, traverse a wide range of topics when you are together. So it's not only confined to the business agenda that you have with your customer, but it also spills over to each other's personal lives. You get to know each other's taste preferences much better, and that I think goes in a long way in establishing an emotional connect with the customer. So a virtual meeting has the advantage of increasing the frequency of the number of meetings that you can have with the same customer, especially if your customer base is geographically widespread. Then what happens is, it limits your ability to meet your customer, on a one-on-one physical meeting. It limits that because you may be able to do it once in a quarter or maybe once in 6 months. And if your customer base is spread internationally, then maybe once in a year you would be able to meet. But on the virtual platform, the frequency of the meetings can most definitely increase. So the same customer you would be able to meet more often than what you would have otherwise met, when you were doing physical meetings. So that, I believe, obviously is a great advantage over the virtual meetings. What this COVID pandemic has taught us is that we will necessarily, going forward, as travel restrictions ease, we'll need to follow a combination of both. So I would say we will need to pick up the best of both the mediums of communication. Um, Definitely, there is no substitute to a in-person meeting. But what we could also do is increase the customer interaction by following it up with multiple virtual meetings as well. So that's my agenda as well going forward. I think that's how I will be dealing with most of my customers. So my advice to students aspiring to make a career in sales and marketing, in fact, my advice would be to every person who wants to make a career in the corporate world, is to first begin a stint with sales. It's very, very important. We keep talking about, or even in our courses, in our leadership courses, in our sales and marketing courses, or our management courses, we learn about keeping the customer in the center of every decision that we make. And that is only possible when you actually understand the customer very well, and that can be possible. So if you are a, you know if you So if you are someone who's seeking to make a career, say in any discipline other than sales and marketing, I would recommend that you should start off with a stint. It could be a shorter stint, but do start off with a stint where you are given an opportunity to go and work in the field with the customers, understanding the customer nuances, understanding how a customer buys a particular product, what is the thinking process, what goes on in his mind before he makes a purchase decision, and the entire customer journey cycle. Very, very critical. So say even if you are an HR professional or if you're a finance professional, it's extremely important to understand those nuances, so that when you come back and continue with your specialization or your area of expertise, you will always be able to keep the customer in the center of your decision making as you do. For sure, people who are wanting to make a career or seeking to make a career in sales and marketing, you will have to start off with understanding the customers first. There also, I would recommend that you please take up a field job. It's very, very important. Not a job which makes you sit in the office, but a job that makes you travel to the customers. Very important. I think this is an investment that will reap a lot of rewards to you as you go about climbing the corporate ladder. It also accelerates your career in organizations, and I have seen it myself, experienced it myself, and also have seen it with many of my other successful professionals who I work with and who I interact with. There's a stark distinction between people who have made it big pretty early in their professional life vis-a-vis others, people who have invested in roles and responsibilities which take them very closer to the customer early on in their career. I have seen them grow much, much more faster within the corporate world as well.